All right, so before starting out, let's go ahead and see what you will be building in this project. You can see that we are building a recipe application and it is running on an iOS or iPhone device as well as macOS. You can go to different recipes and you can look at the details of each of these recipes along with their rating. You can also filter the recipes from starters to entrees to desserts, and you can also show all the recipes. And the same is true for the macOS platform. You can see all the recipes. You can also filter the recipes. And we have achieved this by using common or shared views between iOS applications and the macOS application. So this is what you will be building. Let's go ahead and get started. So now that you have seen that what we will be building for this project, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create a New Xcode project. And you can see that there are many different templates to choose from. You can choose iOS, you can choose macOS, multi-platform also, which will add iOS and macOS. But I like to actually use an empty project because it gives me a little bit more feature and flexibility to add my own project. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that. The product name, I'm just going to call it Recipe App or My Recipe App. And let's just put it on the desktop. That's perfectly fine. Now you can see that when we create the project, it literally has nothing in it. It's completely empty. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new target. All right. So let's go ahead and add new target. New target. And this time I'm going to first start with the iOS application. So I'm just going to select the iOS and then application. I will call it My Recipe App iOS. This is the iOS version. Make sure that you are selecting SwiftUI and finish. So we have added one target for My Recipe App for iOS. This is the iOS code we will be writing for our iOS application. Great. The other thing that I want to do is to add for macOS. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new target for macOS. Then again select the app, which is already selected, and I will say My Recipe App for macOS. Again, we have to make sure that you are selecting SwiftUI because we will be using SwiftUI to create our Mac application. So now we have two targets that we have added. Let's start with the iOS part. Actually, we need to add a little bit more over here. I'm going to go ahead and add a new group and I will call it shared. And this means that all the views, all the models, everything that will be in the shared group will be shared among the iOS and macOS platform. So the first thing is that, well, what do we need to create? Well, we're creating recipes, and I'm not going to be pulling recipes from some API. We will just have hard-coded recipes. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new group inside this, and I will call it, let's go ahead and call this something, call it models. And now we can go ahead inside the shared folder, shared group, we can create a recipe. Okay, there we go. Font size is too big, so let's go ahead and minimize this. That should be good enough. Okay, so this is where we will have our recipe structure. So let's go ahead and create that recipe. And by the way, I'm not using MVVM design pattern or anything like that. You can use any pattern that you want, but we're just making sure that we populate these recipes with some hard-coded data and we are able to display these recipes. So here are different things that each recipes will have. It will have an ID, and we need ID because we're using identifiable. We need the name, we need the photo, description, and the rating. All right, and the photo will be in the assets folder, so we will need to get the assets also. Okay, Now, what about the recipes itself? Well, as I mentioned earlier on, we're not fetching any recipes from a URL or anything like that. So we will be just creating our recipes with hard-coded data. So here are the recipes. Now, one thing the recipe includes is a course, whether it is a starter, whether it is an entree, whether it is a dessert. So let's go ahead and add another enum for course, and that will be our course. And you can see that all of these recipes have some sort of a starter or something that is dictating what kind of a course it is. And let's go ahead and add a course property. Let's go ahead and build it now. Okay, so that's great. We got that working. That's perfectly fine. Now, the other thing that we need to do is in the shared over here, we need to add some sort of content, meaning like the preview content. All right. So for now, you can create your own preview content over here. You can see the preview assets over here. For iPhone, there's nothing. And we have a preview content also for the macOS, which is nothing. It's completely empty. All right. So we can create these preview assets for our shared because we will be sharing those preview assets. So let's go ahead and add a new group. We will call it preview content. And let's go ahead and add a new file, asset catalog. And we should call it preview assets. And make sure that we add also the Mac target also. So it's available in the Mac. Let's go ahead and create that. So here's our preview assets. You can see that the preview assets doesn't really contain anything right now. Eventually, it will be a good idea that we have some sort of images over here. Let's see if we can actually drag some images. Apparently, I cannot really do that. But I will have to fill it up somehow, the images for different dishes. All right, so I have dragged and dropped a couple of different images. You can see we have starters, we have entrees, we have desserts and everything. All right, so these are just 4 images, but you can have as many images as you want. Okay, let's go to models, click on recipe. And we need to make sure, that the recipe.swift, this particular file is actually available for iOS target as well as the macOS target. So you can see that right now in the target membership, only one of them is checked. This means that the recipe.swift file is available in the iOS target, but not the macOS target. So we're going to go ahead and check that one also so that I can use the recipe.swift file in multiple targets. All right. Okay, so that is looking fine. A couple of other things that we need to make sure that we add into shared is our different views. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new group. I will call it views, and everything that's going into shared will be shared between views. All right. So one of the things I want is a rating view. You can see I can't really drag and drop it over here apparently. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new view, a SwiftUI view. And I will call it rating view. I will just simply copy paste the code, and we will make sure that the rating view is added to both the targets. This is simply a rating view. I have a different video which shows you how to create a rating view. It's just going to display some stars, nothing more. Let's go ahead and build that. And let's go ahead and select some sort of other device apart from iPod. Okay, so that looks fine. Now the next step that we want to do is we want to have some sort of a view that can display all the recipes. All right. So we will go ahead and create that view inside the shared because we want to share that view. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new view. I will call it recipe list view. And now we need to start working on how to display all the recipes which are hard-coded which are going to be coming from recipe.swift file, and how do we display that into a recipe list view? All right. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So we're going to wait for this to show up. Here we go. Great. Okay. So how do we display list of recipes? Well, if you want to display a list of anything, you definitely need a list. So we're going to have the list. We're going to make sure that we are using recipe.all. So that is going to give us all the different recipes. We will access a recipe. It's just a model. We are not using the MVVM design approach. I'm just making it a little bit more simpler by eliminating that particular layer. We're just trying to see that if we are building a platform independent app, what kind of views can be shared between iOS application as well as a macOS application. So right now, we're just making this common view which can list all the different recipes, all the different dishes. All right. Okay, so the first thing is always a good idea to simply just try to see that can we even display the name of a recipe. Okay, so that's good. And you can see the name of the recipe is getting displayed. How about can we display an image? So I'm just going to go ahead and embed this in a horizontal stack. And I'm going to say recipe.photo. Okay, it is displaying for two of them, but you can see for the cheeseburger and cheesecake, it is definitely not displaying. So we need to fix that part. So let's see that what we are doing over here. For desserts, we are saying cheesecake. And if we go to our preview, actually we did say cheesecake for some reason. It's not pulling it up. Not sure if I have to say JPEG or something. It should be just able to pull it up. Where is it? Recipe list view. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so cheesecake is displaying now. Mini cheeseburgers are not displaying. So we need to fix those things also. So all of these different things you need to fix. All right, so let's see. Where are the cheeseburgers? Mini cheeseburger is cheeseburger.jpg. So let's go ahead and fix that. And hopefully this will also get displayed now. Okay, everything is too big right now. So we're just going to go ahead and probably resize it by calling resizable. And we can also set the frame. So I can set the frame to be the width 100 and the height to be 100. Okay, now they're looking a little bit better. The other things that we can do is we can have rounded corners. So if you want rounded corners, you can use a clip shape that will give you a little bit more rounded corners if you like. There we go. For the recipe name, we can use a different font, like a headline font, a little bit bold. And we can also add padding to it. Let's say 6 or something. There we go. All right. Okay, so we got everything to be displayed. That's actually pretty good. Now we need to make sure this is just a recipe list view, and we need to make sure that we can display the recipe in our actual iPhone target or iOS target. So if we go to the iOS target, which is this one, you can see that we have a content view. So what we want to do is have these things a little bit more organized. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new group, and I will call it screens. And I will just try to put the content view over here in the screens folder. And that's it. Okay. So now the content view should be able to use and utilize the recipe list view. All right. So let's go over here. Content view in the iOS application. I'm going to use a navigation view because I eventually want the navigation. I will use a recipe list view. You can see it's not really coming up. We will make sure that it comes up, and we will use recipe.all. Okay. And for list style. You can see the IntelliSense is completely gone now. Plain list style. Let's go ahead and run this. And a couple of different things. The recipe list view doesn't really work because it depends on you passing in the recipes which you actually never passed. So we used it over here, but we never really passed it. So it's a good idea to pass the recipes, making it a little bit more flexible. So recipes, an array of recipes. And we can simply pass this right there. So let's go ahead and do that. Recipes, perfect. And now the preview provider is complaining that, hey, you need to pass in the recipes. We can simply say recipe.all, and that will allow us to pass the recipes. Perfect, right? Now we can go back to our content view and try to see what kind of a preview it will create. You can see that this is a preview for our recipe, my recipe for iOS target, and it looks perfectly fine. There are a couple of things we can actually include if you want to. You can include like some sort of a title if you want to. That's perfectly fine. If I want to include a title, I can go over here and I can also call navigation title or something, and it will include that. All right. I may have to restart my Xcode because you can already see that I have no IntelliSense right now. It's completely gone. So let's go ahead and I'm going to restart it. I'm going to come back. Okay, now we can jump into recipe list view and let's go ahead and see what's going on in the recipe list view. What we can do is we can try to add the title somewhere over here. Navigation title. We can call it recipes. Currently, it does not really display the navigation view. That's because in the preview, we're not really wrapping it inside navigation view. So let's go ahead and wrap it in the navigation view so we can see that how the title will look like. And this is how it will look like. So that looks pretty good. All right. Okay, so iOS part is done. I think it looks good. Now let's go ahead and move to our Mac part. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and add a new group, and I will call it screens and move my content view inside the screen so that all the different screens are over there. All right. And inside our Mac OS, we're going to do kind of like the same thing. So inside the content view, I can use a navigation view. And inside the navigation view, again, you can see the IntelliSense is gone now. Recipe, we are going to pass in the recipes, which will be recipe.all. And we will provide some sort of a frame to it. We will use minimum width to be, let's say, 300. Let's go ahead and build it. Build is successful. You can see that the preview never works. I'm not sure what's wrong with this, but the preview for Mac OS apps never really have worked for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a different target over here, this one, Mac OS, so that we can run a Mac OS application. Let's go ahead and run this and see how it appears. So for Mac OS, at least for me, I have to run it in an actual simulator so that I can see how it's working. And you can see that the first time you're running it, it actually does take a while. But this is how it looks like. It actually looks pretty good. We have utilized our recipe list view to display all the recipes. So this is how it's looking like. It's pretty good. We are able to reuse our recipe list view in our Mac OS application. That's great. Now, the next thing that we need to do is the detail part. Whenever I click on a recipe like chicken nuggets or a roast sticky chicken, I want to show the details of that recipe and the rating of the recipe, the codes of the recipe, the description of the recipe, the image are over here on this side. So how can we do that? So let's go to the shared view. And in the shared view, Now I'm going to create a recipe detail view. So another view, we're going to create a new view, recipe detail view. Once again, we're making sure that both the targets are selected. Okay, so this will be our recipe detail view. Let's go ahead and select iOS, so at least we can see the preview, because the macOS preview never really worked for me. Okay. So in order for the recipe detail view to work, someone should pass in the recipe. So somebody is going to pass in the recipe. And as soon as I do that, the previews are going to complain that, hey, you got to pass in the recipe. So let's go ahead and get the recipes using recipe.all and simply pass in the first one. You can pass in second one if you want to, but we're just going to pass in the first one. All right. And now what we want to do is we just need code to basically display the recipe. And that can be anything, right? I mean, that is completely up to you how you are creating that. So I'm just going to copy paste it. It's basic SwiftUI code. It's not like some crazy stuff going on. You will see it's pretty basic stuff. All right. Okay. So a couple of different things going on over here. It's complaining over here that you're using a recipe course, but you don't really have a title in the course. So this means there's a problem with our recipe model. So let's go ahead and update our recipe and basically the course enum to have a title so that we can display the title. So this means that we have to go to the recipe.swift. And you can see the course over here, which as an enum does not really contain any property called title, but we can extend our course enum to support and introduce a title property, which is going to return us the title of a particular course, like all starters, entrees, and desserts. Let's go ahead and build our application. And let's go ahead and dive into recipe detail view. Hopefully that will be fixed now. And let's see how recipe detail view works. So here it is, the recipe detail view. You can see on the right-hand side, we have an image, we have a starter, because this is a starter, and we have description, we have rating. I can go ahead and also put different recipes over here. You can see if I change the array from 0 to 1, we can go ahead and see how it will look like. This is how the starters will look like. So everything looks fine. All right. We can go to 0, I think, if you want. There we go. So the next step for us is, how do we take the user from a recipe list view to a recipe detail view? So let's go to our recipe list view, which we are right now. And what we will do is we will wrap this in a navigation link. Navigation link. We have to provide a destination. Where are we going? So that destination will be a recipe detail view. And in that, we will pass in the recipe and the text that will appear so that we can click on it. That will be the whole stack. Let's go ahead and make sure that this is a little bit more organized. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and press the play button, try to go, and there we go. So chicken nuggets, something else, mini cheeseburgers, cheesesteak, and so on. So it looks like this is working perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and see how that will work when we are running it on a Mac app. So let's go ahead and change the target to macOS, and we're going to run it to see how it actually looks like. Okay, so that also looks fine. Now, if you want to, you can change the Mac app and create a recipe detail view of your own and to adjust the image and all those things. So that's a good thing that you have flexibility of doing. So you can see that we are reusing our views and we are able to utilize these couple of different views. Okay, that's great. Let's go ahead and stop that. The other thing that I want to add is some sort of a filter that will allow us to filter based on the different courses, starters, dessert, entrees, and so on. So how can we achieve that? So we will go into our recipe list view. I'm already inside over there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an enum like filter course. And that will have different courses. And it's also case iterable, which means that we can iterate through these courses and display these different courses. It's identifiable, so we can use it in a for each or a list if we want to. And inside the recipe list view, we are going to create a state property, which is going to keep track of the filter. So we are going to go ahead and say filter, and this is a filter course.all. That will be kind of like the default case for filter. Okay, let's go ahead and see what's going on over here. We do have case all. I'm not sure why it is complaining over here. Filter. Oh, there's an equal to sign, and there we go. All right. Okay, so that should be good. And finally, we will go ahead and create a property called filter recipes, which is going to give you a recipe. And that particular property is going to be performing the actual filter using the filter function. So we will get the recipe. We will return you recipe.everything. So recipe, well, I'm going to check over here, I guess. If the filter is equals to all, then we will simply return all the recipes. Else, we will go ahead and check the recipe. So recipe.codes.raw value is equals to the filter.raw value. And now we can use filter recipes instead of recipes over here. So filter recipes. Now, nothing is going to get filtered because we don't really have any control to perform the filter. So we still have to write the code to perform the filter. And this is kind of up to you. You can use segmented controls over here. I'm going to use a toolbar. So let's go ahead and add a toolbar. And inside the toolbar, we can have a toolbar item. And inside the item, we can have a menu. And inside the menu, we can have a picker that is going to display that menu. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. It's a simple picker. And I think we also need to have a label, which is going to allow us to select or click on a different button. All right. I'm going to select everything, Control I, a little bit more formatting. And you can see right over here, we have the actual filter. The picker view, whenever we will pick something, it's going to update the filter property. And since the filter property is marked with state, it's going to re-render the view. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. You can see it looks nice. It actually displays all the options. I can press on starters, I can press on entrees and desserts, and all of them are filtering out correctly. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and check on macOS if it's doing the same exact thing. So we can see the filter option is right there, and I can filter by course, I can filter by entrees, and I can filter by desserts, or I can simply say all, that show me all of them. And when I select any one of them, it shows me the details. So you can see that by using SwiftUI, we have created one app, and most of the components in this app are being shared by iOS and macOS. But we do have the feature, we do have the flexibility of using the components that we want to. So if we want to not use the recipe detail view for macOS, we can create our own recipe detail view and use it over here. That's perfectly fine. All right. Now, if you do take that approach, then the code will become a little bit different because the recipe detail view, as you can see, is kind of like baked into over here, right? So we need to make sure that when you are using recipe list view, you're also passing a kind of like a destination view or whatever you want to call it, so that the macOS can pass its own destination view and the iOS can pass its own destination view. That becomes a little bit more complicated, but it can be done. All right. But right now, in this video, at least you have learned that how you can create shared views and start sharing them in an iOS application as well as Mac application. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. You can see that I have a lot of different courses, especially targeting iOS and SwiftUI. I just released my brand new course, which is SwiftUI Cookbook, which contains over 100 recipes for building iOS applications. I also have courses on MVVM design pattern, SwiftUI complete guide, the core data, RX Swift. I also have the combined course, Swift course, MVVM design pattern, async in await, which is new, introduced in iOS 15 and Xcode 13. All of those different things, you can get the courses. And the best way to get these courses is to check out the links in the description. And please use the links in the description, because if you use those links, I get to keep a little bit more higher revenue of the sale. Thank you so much for your continuous support. And if you have comments, let me know.